My name is Atkinson-Palombo, and the title of my presentation today is Head, Heart, and Paws. In it, I explain how dogs can help to heal our divided nation and assist in the fight for our collective future. I prepared this talk for the Environmental Studies capstone students at the University of Connecticut, but the ideas contained in it may be of interest to a much wider audience. One of my hopes is it will help everyone, no matter what their education level, party affiliation, or identity. In fact, in response to a solid critique of an earlier version of this presentation, I am even willing to extend the concept to cats and other pets too. Thank you, Dr. Croteau and Jacko, for that note. First, a little about me. I'm a senior beagle of an uncertain age and failing health. In addition to a wide range of aches and pains, what started out as a small cyst quickly grew into a seething mass. Evidently, it's a tumor. The vet was quite worried that I might not make it through my surgery because of a heart murmur. And so, in what may be my final days, I decided to write a blog to share some of the dizzying highs of what ended up being an eventful journey from a kill shelter in Tennessee to a forever home in Connecticut, where I have spent the past 12 years. In preparing for this talk, I wanted to put together a CV. I know some of you, even though you're seniors, have not done that. Shout out here to Brianna at the Center for Career Development. She shared a lot of resources, but when I went to the site, it said they were only helping Huskies, so I figured that's out the window. I cobbled my CV together myself, which ended up being quite easy, because since 2008, I've had the same job, family pet. In March 2020, however, because of the pandemic, I became a teaching assistant. We all had to scramble. I adjusted. I don't have much of a formal education. My mom did take me to obedience school in 2010 and 2011, and then again in 2013, before finally giving up. They still let me get the outfit, though. Here's a picture of me in my almost alma mater hoodie. Even though I don't have any formal qualifications, you don't really need any to understand that the environment is important. I try to get out and enjoy nature as often as I can. The picture on the left shows me at Sunny Acres Park in Mansfield in October 2008 with Al Lewis, who was about 10 at the time. The picture on the right shows me just last week in my neighborhood of Freedom Green. Don't you just love the New England foliage? Sweater weather has officially arrived. In just 12 short years, my expert beagle nose has detected a considerable change in the environment. I know that my good friend, Dr. Angie Seth, our climate scientist, has all the data to back this up. She's an atmospheric scientist who works with Governor Lamont to try and get decision makers to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But some people just don't want to listen to the science. I can think of one in particular who is currently refusing to leave the White House. That is, just egging people on in this regard. In the meantime, extreme weather events have been on the rise. I saw this horrifying news article in the Washington Post about pets left behind during Hurricane Katrina. You can see from this image that they are so bad that the editor has had to slap on a warning. Some images in this post may be disturbing because of their graphic nature. The one on the front page shows a dog sitting outside his house waiting for his family to return. Because some of you would have been in kindergarten when Hurricane Katrina happened in 2005, I'll give you some background on the storm. It was a Category 5 Atlantic hurricane which caused over 1,800 deaths and $125 billion worth of damage. The city of New Orleans, which lies at the mouth of the Mississippi, was hit especially hard. Some of the levees failed and water came rushing into the city. I'm not downplaying the loss of human life here, especially the disadvantaged people in the Ninth Ward. The government told them to evacuate, but did not provide them with the means to do so. Some people were trapped on the roofs of their houses for days, waiting for help. But for me, as a dog, the effect on my furry friends is particularly heartbreaking. The picture on the right by Carol Guzzi for the Washington Post upset me a lot. This must have been what the Washington Post editor was talking about when they mentioned graphic images. The caption states, "A frightened dog in New Orleans found next to his dead companion." There's a little fellow cowering at the top of the stairs. I'm assuming that's his friend lying prostrate on the living room floor. Can you imagine? Just horrific. So again, to recap, that was back in 2005. You would like that after an event of that magnitude, that people would start listening to the IPCC. But no, just last year they concluded that the climate emergency that has long since been talked about in the future tense has essentially arrived. In the meantime, we are experiencing wash, rinse, and repeat. Every hurricane season claims its victims year after year. Those with more resources are more resilient, but some people are wiped out by it. Here are some particularly disturbing images involving some friends of mine in North Carolina, possibly even relatives who almost died during Hurricane Florence in 2018. Marco Di Paola, the journalist who rescued them, was really mad. He tweeted that the owner had left them locked in an outdoor cage that filled with flood water that was rapidly rising. He went on to explain, "We got them out, but by the time we left, the water was so high that they would have drowned." He issued the following call to action: bring your pets with you. This is all so worrying that psychologists have had to invent a new term, eco-anxiety. I may not have much of a formal education myself, but I do believe the scientists. I mean, A, why would they all make up the same story? Well, 97% of them anyway. And B, the effects are visible to the naked eye. It's not exactly a secret. The people in Florida surprised me the most. They're having to spend billions of dollars to raise up the roads in places like Miami Beach because of sea level rise, but no one in the government is supposed to mention climate change. A strange situation indeed. I think it's called ideological intransience. People outside the United States seem a bit more willing to listen. People from all over the world got together in Paris in 2016 to sign an agreement. America was not keen on it, though. Something to do with coal miners and the Koch brothers, who have lots of money invested in the fossil fuel industry. Not only that, but the current administration has been intent on reversing environmental regulation. This New York Times article from just last week identified 84 rollbacks that have already taken place and another 20 that are in the works. People in the fossil fuel industry are worried about something called stranded assets. What about stranded beagles? Get your priorities straight. I'm going to introduce a term now called intergenerational inequity. What it means is that because people have been ignoring the growing climate emergency for decades, now that it is here, society is looking to young people to fix the problem. That doesn't sound very fair to me. Greta Thunberg did a good job, I think, of explaining it. Before I play you a clip of her talk, I will acknowledge that I am aware of the critiques of Greta, which seem somewhat harsh, as she is just a schoolgirl. Some people argue that she's become the poster child for youth climate action and crowded out the voices of many others, including indigenous groups who have been trying to share the same message for decades. Critiques notwithstanding, I do admire her passion.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Donald Trump got really upset about her glaring and his not taking action on climate change, and in fact, actively adopting policies or implementing measures that were going to make things worse. He tried to insult her with the following tweet. So ridiculous, Greta must work on her anger management problems, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill. In the meme of who started it versus who finished it, here's what she tweeted at the November 2020 election. So ridiculous, Donald must work on his anger management problems, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Donald, chill. I do feel sorry for him, though, because he might not have any friends. I heard that he's the only president who has not had a pet in the White House. I know that 2020 has been a really tough year for many people, especially young people. Time magazine wrote an interesting article about what could come to be called Generation C, with the C standing for COVID. All the traditional rites of passage, such as college graduation, have been interrupted, not to mention job internships and employment opportunities. Even before COVID hit, the nation was already divided. This slide here shows a picture taken in Charlottesville where white nationalists and counter-protesters clashed and blamed one another, and the police for the violence that erupted and caused multiple injuries and one death. In the wake of the November 2020 election, the nation has shown signs of fracturing even further. These images show two very different scenes. With all the nastiness in the run-up to the election and a fight over the outcome, concerns are running high about whether or not the country can be unified.
Now you do what they told you! Now you do what they told you! Now you do what they told you! Now you do what they told you!
Missed your workout this morning. Why don't you go ahead and hit the dance floor over here? Let them do what they gonna do. Why don't y'all bring it back? Let's get this party going. Come on, keep the party going. Let's go.
This is a concept called head, heart, and hands that is used to explain how transformational learning occurs. This framework suggests that for people to undertake deep learning, the cognitive domain, the head, needs to engage in critical reflection. At the same time, the affective domain, the heart, needs to be engaged in relational knowing. And finally, the psychomotor domain, the hand, needs to be involved through engagement. Only when these three domains are activated can transformational learning take place. I think that some of these ideas are also reflected in quotes from inspirational leaders. Many of you are familiar with Gandhi's call to action for us to be the change that you wish to see in the world. An equally inspirational line comes from Lady Diana, who explained, "I don't go by the rule book, I lead from the heart, not the head." In his article on Teaching for Turbulence, Michael Manates has suggested that scholars of environmental studies need a better understanding of how social and political change occurs. Will Smith also has the following advice for moving forward. Something hurts, lean in. You just lean in to that point until it loses its power over you. There's a certain amount of suffering that you have to be willing to sustain if you want to have a good life. And the real trick is to be able to sustain it with your heart open and still be loving. I know that a lot of us have been having a hard time seeing environmental policies roll back and need to find a way to move forward. Countries like South Africa, whose people suffered atrocities from its apartheid era, have held truth and reconciliation hearings to try to heal the deep rifts in society. These sculptures, here in the lower right-hand corner of the slide, show a sculpture called The Butcher Boys by Jane Alexander that depicts 3 humanoid beasts that represent brutalism during South Africa's apartheid era. I do want to acknowledge, though, that as we move forward in the new administration to address climate change, we do need to acknowledge the role played in GHG emissions by our capitalist system. For me, this is most easily summed up by 3 words: adopt, don't, shop. Why do you need to go out and get a fancy designer dog when there are lots of ones who need good homes? I feel the same way about old buildings and places. Some Americans are keen to move on to the next new shiny thing, and to do so abandon buildings, neighborhoods, and in some cases entire cities. Hence my idea about how rescue dogs can help to unify the country. The most recent IPCC report was clear that the climate emergency has essentially arrived. In addressing that climate emergency, we need to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and take a community-minded approach that recognizes that we are all in this together. In place of the framework of head, heart, and hands, I suggest a framework of head, heart, and paws on the basis that love, compassion, forgiveness, and tolerance are essential ingredients to healing our nation and helping us move forward together to address the ongoing climate crisis. This coming January, Major Biden will become the first rescue dog to live in the White House. A very proud moment indeed for all of us rescue pets. I hope that this transition will provide our country with the opportunity that it needs to move forward to do the work that will be needed to build community and address global climate change. Go Huskies and beat Navy. In case you'd like to get in touch, here are my contact details.